Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my page 112 tag video for December 2023. The page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean at Sean the Book Maniac. He based it off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of said prize of novels solely by reading page 112, which usually is in the middle of a novel, past all of the polished pages for editors. It's supposed to be the real gritty writing, and when you don't have the context of the rest of the story, you can only judge it based on the quality of the writing. So I've been using this tag monthly since the beginning of COVID to whittle down my physical unread shelves as I, of course, build them back up again. And what I do is I take 3 slips of paper out of this handy dandy Books and Cats mug. These slips of paper are the books on my shelves I acquired in 2022 or before. There's just a small amount left now that we're at the end of the year. Next month I'll be adding my 2023 acquisitions into the mug. I'm very excited for that. We're on the cusp of change here. But before I get into that, we have one final month to get through of reading in 2023. And so what I do is I pick out 3 random pieces of paper. I read page 112 on camera with you and discuss what I think of them, and then I choose one of those books to join my month's TBR. So okay, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting with book number 1. So you know, these little pieces of paper, they start to stick together and curl up, so sometimes it's hard to pick just one, but it's okay, this is one. Okay, that worked. Okay, The Kinship of Secrets by Eugenia Kim. I'm pretty sure I got this from my library's used bookstore. Not sure which year it was exactly that I got it. Sometimes these things run together. I'm pretty sure I've never played with it before. It was probably last year. We're in for a new ride together. Okay, with book number 2, I tend to try to like some variety, except a lot of my books have a samey literary feel to them, but we'll see, okay, what this book number 2 might be. Okay. Ice Palace by Edna Ferber. I have played with this one before. I got it from an antique bookstore a few years ago when I went with a friend to a small town in West Virginia for our birthdays, which was fun. And Edna Ferber is a famous author from yesteryear, so I remember this page, and also I've played with it before, so I have less post-production to do. That's always fun, and we'll see how it stacks up. And finally, book number 3, New or Old. I always like old books because then I have less post-production to do, but you know, new books are exciting because I don't know exactly what to expect. So, yep, now these 2 definitely are sticking together, so I'll have to see about another one, like maybe this one. Okay. The Come Down by Rebecca Frumkin, who is now Raphael Frumkin, and I'm pretty sure I have played with this one before, and I'm pretty sure it also came from my used library bookstore, and this one I'm pretty sure I heard about through the Jewish Book Council website. So yeah, I think in terms of content, these stories will be slightly different, but I guess we'll go ahead and see. Okay, you've seen me grab all 3 of these books. I'm actually going to leave it and read them to myself first to gather my own thoughts to then share with you, so stay tuned. And I'm back, ready to talk about these books. It turns out I actually have played with all 3 of them in the past, not just 2 of them, so this will be fun to pit various past versions of myself against each other. Starting with book number 1, The Kinship of Secrets by Eugenia Kim. A girl should not be separated from her purse. She said nothing to prevent the outburst of frustrated tears. The threat of childish tears made her reassess her attitude, and she took a few surreptitious big breaths, lips tight. She felt stubborn, ugly, and closed up, far from the feeling of freedom from the previous week, which she'd mistakenly attributed to the Kimses being rich. It wasn't that their generosity of things had opened up her heart to Sarah and her parents, and thus to herself. It was the generous attention she'd received in that house, from outings or being asked questions at the dinner table, to witnessing Sarah and her mother talk about clothes and shoes, in English, like girlfriends, her own opinion sought after, and an unprecedented privacy in her guest room that never would be invaded by an inquisitive mother, who was too busy to keep track of her daughter except by snooping through her things. Moran sighed and did the right thing. "I'm sorry, Dad. I had so much fun, and they're so different from us." She noticed he was taking a circuitous route home. "I know. It is your first extended visit outside the house, so some adjustment is to be expected. They do live quite extravagantly, but they've been generous with us, too." He patted the steering wheel, and she remembered Dr. Kim had given them the car years ago, when they were thick into the dog and pony shows. It was rusted in places on the chrome bumpers, but without a single dent, and her dad had learned how to maintain the motor to keep it running reliably. "We just don't have that kind of money, and even if we did, much of it would still go to support your sister and your uncle's family and soul." Her dad was so measured in his speech, always thoughtful and distant, and so unlike Dr. Kim, who joked and hugged Sarah with ease. Calvin turned the Plymouth onto 13th Street, which led further away from their house. "We missed you," he said. "I missed you guys too," she lied. Their daily calls to check in had made her crabby and monosyllabic on the telephone. "How's Mom?" she said dutifully. "Making kimchi. Your mother was always a hard worker, and she's much happier these days having that teaching job." "I wish I was old enough to have a job. I could earn my own money and buy Mom a television." Moran had planned to ask him for a weekly allowance beyond the milk money, but her outburst had squandered that opportunity. I like this better on reread, I think. I was about to, give it a little bit of a pass because it's technically an advanced reader copy, so you never know what might have changed, but I like it a little better now. The beginning is a little rough, like speaking of, too much exposition, where we're really just inside of Moran's, it seems, head, where she's remembering just how it was, I think, to spend time with this Kim family. That's what I think is going on. It seems like they're very different from her own family. So she's in her head, and then it takes a pivot where she has to do the right thing, which I'm sure is context from before, and it seems like her father is upset with her for something. And he's, kind of putting on an authoritative air, I suppose, trying to get her back in line or back under his thumb. That's the impression I got. There's all this language of, "You haven't been outside the house before," which I'm like, whoa, how young or old is this character to not be outside the house before? And then I really like the lines about taking the circuitous route home or that sort of thing, because that's Kim telling us, or showing us, I should say, that he's trying to elongate this conversation and this, I would say, power he has over her in the car where she can't go anywhere. That's my feeling about what those lines mean, and it's just a great way to get the point across. And yeah, he keeps on, putting in his lines about how the Kims are, a rich family, a nice family, but so different from us, although I think some of that was her talking. And there was some, I guess, background about their relationships and the Kims helping them out. And I really like the stuff, I guess, about Dr. Kim and Sarah, although that's all, exposition and not in the present day scene. I think so, yeah, a couple clunky lines, but I really liked it, and there's just a really interesting premise on this page where they're obviously a little bit impoverished, where they're saying even if we did have the money that the Kims have, we'd have to send it to family members who are presumably in need for some reason, and we don't have that money, and there's just talk about how it seems like their finances are a little strayed. So, yeah, we have class clashes, which would be a really interesting, stomping ground for a book. I hope to see more of it in here. Book number 2 is The Come Down by Rebecca, now Raphael Frumpkin. But being in a body was some fragile bullshit he'd have to tolerate forever. being in a body that could get broken, with a mind that could get hurt, with a face that got spat on and talked down to. The living room was empty, as he'd expected. The TV was still on, playing a western, so he turned it off. He thought about cleaning the room and then realized that he wasn't going fast enough. He had places to be, and he wasn't trying to spend his whole day pretending like his mom wasn't constantly betraying him. Caleb still called her moms, but Aaron gave up on calling her anything. It had always been something about her, the way she treated him. She liked Caleb more because they could talk about math and books and whatever else Caleb gave a shit about in school. Every time she found a cigarette in the house or weed, it was always Aaron's fault right away, even the times it was Caleb's. And since Aaron had grown this past year, she always walked at a little distance from him when they went out. She hugged him softer and looser, too. And there was a weird stiff way she moved whenever she had to lift him when he was little, like she was lifting something too heavy for her to carry. Plus, the things she didn't make any sense. She had a big, wide forehead and bright, always open eyes, and when they were really little, she smiled a lot and told them to believe that everything in the world was going to work out fine for them. Who believed that? She would tell Caleb when he got another A or found $10 on the ground outside the building, or got kissed by a girl at school, that he got lucky and that there was a pattern to everything and he was being watched out for. Not God, she always said. We don't believe in that religious nonsense. We're not like other people. But weren't they just like other people when they replaced God with something watching out for you? And that something clearly hated Aaron from the start, because the only people who had his back were Andre and a few other guys, maybe Meech's if she liked the tapes he gave her. Then Aaron remembered the watch. He went back to their bedroom where Caleb was already snoring again. Caleb had wanted to get her something nice for her birthday, for once, rather than the usual Bisquick for breakfast handmade card thing he and Aaron sort of did every year. He wanted to get her a Casio, which Aaron thought was ridiculous, but Caleb was obsessed with it, tearing out the pages of a bunch of nerd magazines and storing them under his bed. He even went into the store in Tower City, and the guy told him he was only allowed to use one coupon per purchase. Okay, this one I think is a little bit of a tricky one. I like what's going on. The action I think is compelling. You know, family drama is always pretty compelling to me, and we quite obviously have a son in this book who is resentful of his mother. He thinks his mother, you know, treats him unfairly and differently, especially than his brother Caleb. So, like, it's not only that she treats him unfairly, but that she treats his brother better. And that's, you know, catnip for me, this sort of, you know, backdrop. And I felt like the writing was pretty decent, but it was almost entirely exposition. Nothing was happening in the present in the story other than I think Caleb turning off the television and going into their room where Aaron was sleeping. I think I might have gotten the boys' names mixed up there, but anyway. So yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot, you know, present plot action to compel us, and I wish that there was a little more breakup between all of Aaron's resentful thoughts and things happening in the present. I think there's a hint that he's going to mess with this birthday present, although on reread, I'm not quite sure the birthday present is for the mom or maybe for this Meech's character. I'm not quite sure. But I think it's an interesting setup for a character. I like it, but I don't think, you know, I wish this page were a little more varied. And finally, Book 3 is Ice Palace by Edna Ferber. If Thor Storm and Sarah Kennedy had been philanderers, or even fairly steady patrons of those early-day saloons and line houses, lonely when alone, driven to the false comfort of drink or the fleeting solace of the town women when oppressed, Bertie Ballantyne would never have known Alaska, much less become one of its most respected citizens. Sora and Thor took a drink now and then at the bar of the Rocker Saloon or the Poke of Gold. But it was known that they were not drinkers. They were polite and friendly toward the girls. They knew the women in the little close-huddled log cabins on Old Creek Road, but no woman claimed them. The two stood apart. Both, to the other citizens of the haphazard town, came and went mysteriously. Baranoff admired the two men, sometimes grudgingly. They sensed that in each there was something distinctive. Not stuck up, though. I mean, they don't exactly act like they think they're smarter than other people. Then, wryly, say, but they are at that.
Confined, as the Barnovians were, by barriers of mountains, water, trackless tundra, and killing cold, everybody's business was everybody's business. News traveled by what was called the mukluk grapevine. Mukluks are Eskimo boots of soft, strong moose skins or caribou. News, then, that travels on foot, silently. They say, they say, they say. They tried to extract news of Sar from Thor and to verify Thor's puzzling pattern of life through Sar. Each was loyal to the other, though by now their differences were many and acute. Each pursued his own way of life and process of thinking. The men were in direct antithesis. That crazy Svensky goes off alone with his dog team up to the Eskimo villages. They say he's learned to talk Eskimo. He writes pieces about them, they say, when he's up there, and he lives right with them, dirt and all, and eats the stinking stuff they eat raw. Summers back here, he goes out on the salmon season with the boat crews that bring in the big catch for the Canaries, July and August. They say he works like that, summers, so he can do his writing, winters, real scientific writing. He'll talk to you about it if you come right out and ask him, but for all he's good-natured and all, why, you feel he's kind of studying you. He kind of studies everybody, friendly mind, but there's a look in his eyes like he isn't only listening to you, he's storing away what he hears. Somebody say he's married to one of those half-breed Eskimo girls, but he isn't as big a fool as that. I mean, he's kind of crazy, but he's no fool. So yeah, I gotta say, of the three books, I struggled with this one the most. It is very narrative heavy, really thick paragraphs, a lot going on in them, a lot of jumping back and forth between characters. I don't know if I have some bias about the fact that Edna Ferber was writing in a different time with a different sort of writing was prevalent that I'm just not that used to reading, as I primarily do recently released literary fiction. I'm impressed by all the detail. I mean, I find this town to be fascinating and, you know, all of these sights and sounds to be intriguing, but it's all meshed in too much together. It's a bit overwhelming. None of the characters, for the most part, stick out to me. Maybe Sar and Thor a little bit, because we're being told that they're intriguing. But overall, this didn't grab me as much.
Okay, I think we're gonna get the obvious out of the way first with Ice Palace, which I think its style is just a little too dated for me, and I wasn't as invested in the page, so this one is going goodbye first. And that leaves my choice between books number 1 and 2, The Kinship of Secrets versus The Come Down. And I think I'm going to go ahead, you know, and infer from my past selves that this book was a bit stronger for me. But I also feel like I obviously need to justify it. You know, I didn't, you know, directly pit these two books against each other at the time, after all. And I do think both of them have their strengths, but I guess I still do think this one is a little more disjointed in terms of how the page comes down with a lot of the narrative versus and then one scene. And I don't know, I'm actually pretty sure that the birthday gift is for the mom. I'm not sure where I was going with that last year, but anyway, I do just think that you know, just in measuring up to this one had more intriguing family elements, perhaps. I mean, I did like, you know, this character's resentment toward his mother and his brother, but this one I just have a lot more questions about who are the members of these families to one another and how do they fit together. And maybe there is a sense, you know, I didn't remember immediately reading this page. So in a way, there's a fresh newness to it, even though I have played with the book before. And I feel like there's more, you know, cultural questions in play, which I guess doesn't have much to do with the writing, but in terms of subject matter, it interests me more than, I guess, more generic family stuff happening here. Although ultimately, if the characters are well drawn, that won't matter. That, you know, well drawn characters will trump, you know, just the you know, makeup of the people. But this feels like a nice way to end the year, you know, talking about an Asian American family and how they get on and, you know, the different generational experiences. That type of stuff admittedly is my bread and butter, and it does seem intriguing, this character, having a different relationship with her own family versus the family that she'd been staying with, and I'd like to dive more into that. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all 3 of these books listed down below if you'd like more information. I'm also leaving a link to my TBR playlist if you'd like to see more videos of me playing my page 112 tag or the BookTube spin, which is my other TBR game I play. And another thing I'd like to do in these outro sections is shout out another booktuber who's doing a TBR game or a readathon, because this is my bout of spontaneous reading, and I want to feel like I'm part of the community and also just shout people out for all of their creativity. And this month I'm going to go with Sarah Beth Alred and her TBR game, Shrink the TBR, which actually, I think it has an interesting story that for a while she'd been playing a board game she created called TBR Checkout, and then it looked like she was trying to make it into something she could sell to her patrons and people who were interested. And as she was thinking of the logistics of the game to actually give to other people, the game changed a little bit, including the name. And just recently she got a prototype of the board game, which sounds really cool to actually put in all that work and, get a prototype of the board game wherever she got it from, the manufacturer. And she went through the gameplay and that sort of stuff, so I'll link to that video down below. I hope you are finding fun and engaging things to read as we are now reaching the end of 2023. And I'll be back on this channel for my final author's answer video of this year, where I'm going to be talking about this book, which has a lot of personal meaning for me because it's an anthology where my own short story is published. So stay tuned for that. And I'll link to the Amazon page for this down below as well. But yeah, in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.